Museum Digit
2020.
A Magyar Nemzeti Múzeum online
virtuális konferenciája.
Hi, my name is Kajsa Hattig. I am Head of Museum Experience and Collections at the Regional Museum of Västernorrland in Sweden. Thank you for inviting me to this conference. This is a pre-recorded presentation and I will now start sharing my screen with you, presentation. So today's topic is creating value online in time of or regardless of COVID-19 in the museum sector. A little about me. I have a background in the museum sector since 20 years and before that in the archive sector. As I mentioned, today I'm head of the Museum Experience and Collections Department at the Regional Museum here in Västernorrland. And I've always worked with digital products and publications as well as digitization of collections. In the past 15 years, I've also focused on the impact of digital transformation on museums. During this ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen online events becoming a common thing. During 2020, we have all also become more accustomed to online meetings, not always to physically see our colleagues. And our museum offerings have gradually also started to grow online with live streaming, online events, an increase in film production, etc. Because online is now the new normal. So today's presentation. Today I will sweep across a few examples of online offerings in the museum sector as an effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. Then I'll take a step back and look at the effects of a digital society, which has meant in the past decade that museums really have to innovate regardless of the pandemic. Unless we cater for the online audience, we will become obsolete. To illustrate the steps forward to become a museum of the future that is as relevant online as in the physical environment, I will share some very basic examples from a medium-sized regional museum, the museum where I am now working. And towards the end of this presentation, I will share some thoughts about going forward, about transforming because of the pandemic and at the same time, regardless of it. So what new digital efforts have we seen in 2020 as a result of the pandemic? Researcher Chiara Zoanni in Graz, Austria, has put together a map of new COVID-19 related museum digital initiatives. This is a great start if you wish to dive into what other museums have done and are doing. The initiatives vary a lot and the map is in no way, of course, comprehensive. There are many other reports on museums and new online initiatives as well. For example, by the network of European museum organizations, among others. But here are some examples. The Stockholm County Museum, another regional Swedish museum, has focused on collecting photos from the COVID-19 pandemic, opening up for people living in Stockholm to contribute to the collections and to document the pandemic for future generations. This is, by the way, a museum that has no physical building, but is completely relying on online offerings and program activities. They are 100% relying on creating value online to remain relevant as a museum. The next example is the National Museum of Australia that offers a section on their website called Fun at Home, activities for children and families everywhere. They encourage kids to learn, play, and create using materials found at home and in nature. There are many museums that have been gathering activities that kids can do at home, an initiative that would be interesting to analyze and follow up. If we know this has a positive effect, then it's really a great way to engage kids and families. That is very much also in line with most museums' current offerings. The Met, on the other hand, has actually started to monetize virtual tours. They offer groups to sign up for exclusive tours to take part of highlights of art across the museum. It is a 60-minute online tour, maximum 40 people per reservation. It's available on weekdays between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. They also offer school tours. Again, I'm looking forward to hearing more about the results of these kinds of initiatives to see if it's a way forward also for smaller museums. And this example, I assume many of you have already come across. The Shade Aquarium started soon after lockdown, early in 2020, to let their penguins wander around facilities, visiting other animals and exploring the world outside their enclosure. This has, of course, been a huge success. Who can resist lovely little penguins wandering around? This is a way to remain in contact with the audience and to actually have a larger audience discovering the museum. However, it is a rather siloed experience as long as it is not connected with further learning or other events. But turning back to the sudden surge of online events in the museum sector and delivering content and experience online to audiences, I have this year often been asked about what our museum is doing to stay relevant during the COVID-19 pandemic. And the answer is that yes, we have increased operations focusing on delivering value online to our audiences. But at the same time, this was always in the pipeline for us since 2019. As we then have devoted resources and efforts to better use digital technology, mindsets, and channels, we have a digital strategy. Now, the mere concept of a digital strategy can, of course, be debated. It will certainly not automatically transform the organization. But for us, it is a document to refer to, stating that we should make the most of digital as well as online, and that we need to consider that the first and maybe even only contact a visitor might have with the museum is online through his or her mobile phone. One big reason for museums spending time in the past decade to figure out the role of the online museum business is, first of all, audiences' behavior. We spend a lot of time online. We go about our daily lives online, being social, consuming entertainment, learning, buying food, clothes, etc. And another reason is that while we museums are engaging online, we are also discovering that it's not very easy to reach audiences, to reach through the white noise of content and conversation online, and in the end, also to make an impact. Online activities need to be carefully designed. In order to truly create value online and to make an impact, I have in the past years used the analogy of an ecosystem to visualize how museums are much more than their physical buildings, and that in order to create incentives to allocate resources to all the touch points in the ecosystem, it's helpful to use the word museum experience rather than, for example, exhibitions or programming. Using a common term for delivering value in the entire ecosystem not only helps reallocating resources, but it also helps the organization understand that to deliver this kind of experience, we need a team that together have competences from all parts of the museum, and that to design such an experience, this team needs to work with agile methods, experiments in short cycles, analyze and scale the work in order to deliver a new type of museum experience that we might not yet know what it will look like. So when I talk to colleagues or other museums, I always use this illustration to emphasize that we need to deliver value all across the museum's touch points, and that the experience must be one that connects the dots, that draws the visitor from one dot to another. The experience might start in one end of the ecosystem, perhaps through a blog post, a social media post, or even through channels not owned by the museum, but by a collaborating partner. This content has to lead the visitor into the museum universe. In the past few years, the term the distributed museum has been suggested to describe a museum that is more than its buildings and its exhibitions. Now, further into such a distributed museum experience, a visit to the physical museum building might be suggested to the visitor. But what if we deliver an experience that is just as valuable and exciting, even if the visitor never comes to the museum? I'm not suggesting that online can ever replace a physical visit, but there will always be people who, for many reasons, cannot visit the museum. And they should have a great experience as well. Online is something different from a physical visit, but it can be just as valuable. So my point with this illustration is that if we plan for exhibitions and program activities as siloed experiences, the overarching experience will never take place. There will not be resources allocated or content created that is more than the unique visit to the museum. So how do we deliver this experience? Here's a list with a few things that I believe are crucial to deliver this kind of museum experience. Digital skills and competences are necessary, of course. There need to be staff that understand audiences' needs and behaviors online, as well as the different channels and tools available. The museum needs to set up cross-departmental teams that together will experiment around new types of experiences. And this exploration needs to be done in short cycles. Each experiment has to be evaluated before scaling up and building on previous experiences. The team should also always have an audience-first perspective, build trust, and invite audiences to a dialogue at an early stage. Regardless of what type of initiative you are planning, be transparent and inclusive, also towards colleagues and other stakeholders. Make colleagues and above all management understand the importance of what you're doing. Without strong support from management, delivering value online is very difficult. So, however, theorizing is one thing, implementing new work practices is definitely another. How do we patch the pieces of the puzzle together to a comprehensive whole, a universe where the audiences can seamlessly experience our museum offerings? Most of us are certainly not the Met. Many museums have tight resources, a limited number of staff. So here I will share some of the very basic things our museum has done during 2020 as a step forward. We have increased our collaboration around the museum blog and now regularly invite guest bloggers. This year we had an exhibition with 7 artists working with textile. Even though the museum was never entirely shut down so far in 2020, we have restricted the number of people in the museum. And there were, of course, a lot fewer visitors than in a normal season. So we decided to commission these artists to become guest bloggers and present their work in a personal way on our own website. In April 2020, we quickly also decided to launch a media guide for our open air museum. Normally, most buildings are open and we have staff in traditional clothes welcoming the visitors. This was not possible during the pandemic, so we decided to virtually open the buildings through a media guide. This was done with very short notice, so we have at this point focused on text and photos. Our next step is to use sound and moving images, possibly also dramatizing events that have taken place in the buildings. The museum has previously delivered guided tours around the open air museums on the topic of traditional folklore and folklore creatures. With the media guide, we're now offering a trail for kids where they can listen to actors telling stories of these creatures. This allows for kids and families to, at their own choice, walk around the area now with an online guide that is dramatizing the encounters with the creatures. And in the summer season, many of non-profits organizations that we usually collaborate with in the region, some of them devoted to local authors, they usually have program activities at the open air museum. As this summer, restrictions were implemented in regards to the number of participants at each event, we decided to offer live streaming of the talks. This is something we most likely would not have been doing already this summer if there hadn't been the pandemic. Now it's part of our plan to increase our live live streaming efforts in 2021. We also offered artist talks with the textile artists this summer. As we couldn't have program events as planned in the museum building, this was a great opportunity to open up for people all around the region to participate from home. It was an informal talk moderated by one of our curators. Collecting photos and stories online is something that I have worked with for the past 5 years and that I have implemented at Västernorrlands Museum together with our staff. This is something that was not set up in response only to the pandemic, even though we have also made an effort to collect stories from the region related to the pandemic. To collect online is now becoming a new part of our regular work practices that will take years to fully implement. We're also, as a result of a research project that I have been managing for the past 3 years, collecting social digital photography. The project has produced recommendations for collecting this type of photography. And right now we're starting our first collecting initiative with a newly built tool. The reasons for collecting is that museums will not receive boxes with old photos anymore. The photos we share with our mobile phones are at risk of disappearing for many different reasons. So the collecting tool is built as an open source, and it's available for everyone to download on GitHub. I will provide a link at the end of this presentation. So what's next for our museum? I'll end this presentation with a few thoughts that apply to our museum, but I think also apply to museums in general. These are a few things that I anticipate museums need to prioritize in the museum sector to better adapt to becoming future-proof museums, regardless or not of the pandemic. Digital leadership needs to be in place. I have added a link at the end of this presentation to an article by Jane Finnis at the Culture 24, who is arguing for this. Because without support from management, it's very difficult to implement new work practices and make new priorities. And in the end, to create a new value for museum audiences online. Next is to continue to explore values and benefits of online as well as audiences' behaviors. How can we truly create value online? How do we deliver experiences that are just as exciting online as in the physical building? And what user behaviors do we need to know in order to make the right priorities? Here, it is of course also important that we share experiences within the museum sector. One way to learn how to create value is to implement agile work practices. That is, to work with small teams with multiple competencies that experiment at small scale, learn and quickly build on those experiences in order to deliver a relevant museum experience. In reality, making space and time for experimenting with new formats and channels isn't that easy. Museums are not just entertainment businesses, as we all know. This means we have, of course, a lot of other things to do as well. Manage collections, build knowledge, provide resources for education, etc. Despite this, we do need also to transform and embrace new work practices compatible with online and digital. So last but not least, I recommend museums to explore the concept of the distributed museum. In its simplest form, it's an ecosystem, and from a more complex perspective, a future-proof museum that delivers value online as well as on-site, that is inclusive, engaging, and relevant, and that embraces a supportive work culture. So these are the links, and I will make sure that this presentation is available also to download for you to try out the links for yourselves. Thank you very much. Wish you all the best from Sweden.